Hey, beloved Vermillionaires, it's Fennel, and I'm really, really delighted to be here today with a magnificent human, Sian Johnson. Hi, Sian, and who is a new affiliate, and we are going to be talking about a subject that's really, really close to my heart and has cracked me open in so many ways in my learning, in my relationships, in just opening my eyes to society, actually, and that's the wheel of consent. Because we'll talk about it a bit later with all the details, but Sian has a wonderful non-residential weekend coming up in April. So, as I said, we'll get onto that. In the meantime, and before I start liberally pottering you with questions, Sian, can I ask you to introduce yourself so that people have an idea of who you are, what you do, and then I can start to ask you more about the wheel of consent so that they know where you're coming from.
Great, thank you, Fennel. It's wonderful to be here. I've been a member of Vermillion for since 2019, I think, since it began, and it's wonderful to see how many affiliates there are and the community and everything that's going on. So it's really is exciting to become an affiliate myself. So I'm Sian Johnson, and I'm a sex coach for men and for men and their partners. And I'm also a certified Wheel of Consent facilitator.
I'm just, yeah, overjoyed and filled with glee that you're part of this community and the gifts that you bring. Okay, I am just going to, because I do have some questions here um that I would like to ask. Okay, so there might be a few people in Vermillion because we do get new people coming in all the time. So what I'd like, if you can, is to give us an idea of what the concept of consent is. So maybe we can start with what consent isn't.
Right. Yeah, thank you. I prepared some statements. I was thinking about this issue. It's very easy to talk about what consent is, but we can't always understand what consent isn't. And when we step out of consent, or when we allow ourselves to be in non-consensual situations, traditionally we think of consent as yes or no. And if only it were that simple. But it's not, it's complex. So consent is not passive, going along with something without actively participating or expressing your own desires. That's compliance. Consent is not assuming he didn't say no last time, so it's okay now. That's presumption. Consent is not people pleasing, saying yes to avoid conflict, even if it goes against your true desires. That is sacrificing your self worth. Yeah, I can see these are hitting home. I mean,
Mm.
been there.
It's Yeah, and it's just I think it's an epidemic of the societies that we live in, and that I think is really underpinning of so many of our relational problems within ourselves as much as with anybody else. And it doesn't have to be romantic, it can be familial, career, friends.
Mm.
Um, and Yeah, it's really interesting because I read something the other day that said that when you are in a society that is built on the culture of going to other cultures and taking without consent, how are you supposed to be brought up in those cultures with a healthy mindset around it? And I was just like, fuck, yeah. I mean, this is stuff that people might be, oh, well, I do check it. No, actually, you don't. And it's really hard to understand. And that's one of the things that really, really hugely opened my eyes, actually. So
Mm.
thank you for that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
is it worth, is there
I've
anything
got
more
more.
to
I've got
Yes,
more.
bring it. Yes, please, please pour it on.
I could I could go on and on and on, because I think what it's really useful for us to understand. It's like sometimes when you go into spaces, people have got posters saying, um, if this is happening in your home, that's domestic violence. If this is happening in your home, that's domestic violence. And I can remember seeing one of these posters somewhere and going, fuck, that relationship that I was in, there was no physical violence, but it was domestic violence. I was being manipulated, and I don't want to go off too much on a tangent, but I was in a very abusive relationship, and I had no idea. So sometimes it takes something like this to go and go, crap, I've been out of consent. And this is why this touches me so deeply, because I have spent a lot of my life either not in consent from my own perspective or actually overriding other people's boundaries. So, and it's so easy to do.
It is
Yeah.
so easy to do. Yeah, I think it's a sad thing, but again, a lot of the relationships are abusive, but it's
Yes.
been normalized or accepted that that's just how it is, and it's like and I can completely understand where it comes from: protections, traumas, childhood wounding, how we play out, how we're not taught healthily, and for me, this is a real underpinning of how to work and figure out how to be a healthy human, how to relate to ourselves healthily first, and then be able to offer that to other people.
And also, I mean, what I want people to understand about this process, about the workshops that I run and the spaces that we hold this in, it's a non-judgmental space, because we are steeped in this. We swim in the soup of this non-consensual way of being. So the invitation here is to set aside the judgment, the self-judgment more than anything, the self-judgment and the blame and the shaming, to set that to one side and just go, we're human. We are human. We all do this to some degree or another.
Mm,
We both are we both break consent for other people, and we break consent for ourselves, and we allow consent to consent violations. It's a very strong language, but consent slips or consent violations happen all the time. And the purpose of the wheel is just to bring this to consciousness so that we can find healthier ways of expressing our needs. So, for example, consent is not coercion and pressuring someone until they reluctantly agree. That's manipulation. Yeah. Consent is not over giving, agreeing to offer more than you're comfortable with just to make someone else happy. That's self-neglect. Consent is not saying, if you do this for me, I'll do that for you. That's bargaining.
mm.
Yeah. I'm saying yes to all of these. I've experienced all of these, done all of these in my life. I'm aware of that.
Yeah,
Consent is not fear of rejection, saying yes because you're afraid of disappointing or upsetting or angering another person. That's prioritizing others over your own personal boundaries. Consent is not silence. They didn't object, so they must be okay with it. That's assumption. Yeah. It
yeah,
touches places, doesn't it? Touches places. Consent is not seeking approval, agreeing to something to gain acceptance or validation from others. That's seeking validation. Again, a very human need. Yeah.
yeah,
Consent is not one sided. I'll just take what I want without considering their feelings. That's being selfish. Yeah. Consent is not passive compliance, going along with something because you feel you have no other choice. That's submission, and perhaps not the good kind, the
yeah,
consensual kind of submission.
yeah.
It's a very big difference, right?
There really, really is. Yeah,
There really is. Um, consent is not guilt tripping, but I did so much for you. You owe me this. That's emotional manipulation.
can I jump in there? Because this is
Yeah.
something that I think, you see, what I what I sometimes have an issue with statements as well is sometimes because they have to be generic and broad, it'll go for the most obvious. So, and it's easy. Certainly I've had that to go, well, I don't do that. No, but I'll do a subtler form of it. I am still crossing my boundaries, pushing others over theirs, but it's a subtle thing just because the generic, more extreme examples to clarify it feel like it doesn't apply to oneself. I felt like I still do it on a subtler way. And one of the things that I find, when you were saying about, I think was it bargaining? When you're saying I've done this for you, so for me, that's all rooted in just the simple thing of when the parent goes, whilst you're living under this roof, and how much of that has happened in people's lives.
Mm,
Whilst I'm
yeah.
providing, you'll toe the line. Whilst
Mm,
I'm doing this, well, I did this for you. And it's just like, and again, it's normalized, and
yes.
it's not, it's dysfunctional. And it's a really
Yeah.
sad thing.
A
Mm,
lot of these strategies, because they are essentially strategies for trying to get our needs met. We all have needs. We can't deny the fact that we have needs. We need for validation, need for survival, need
mm,
for comfort, connection, the need for touch, the need for validation. All of these are absolutely basic human needs, and we live in a very big community now, a very big wide world, and most of us are not getting our needs met. And so we
mm,
learn as children we witness in the people around us how they use these strategies to get their needs met. We learn that not that asking for what I want gets us into trouble, because
mm.
what we want is not right for some people, depending on our environment and our culture and our parents' beliefs and or our caregivers' beliefs or our schooling or any of those things. We learn very quickly what's right and what's wrong. So when we have a need, we employ these strategies to get those needs met, because the needs don't go away even if we deny them. And
Yeah,
so, we grow up witnessing having these um, consent violations in our awareness, both acted against and acting against others. So, again, it comes
yeah,
back to this non-judgmental and just bringing these things to awareness. It's really massively important, because how can
yeah,
we respect our own boundaries when we don't? How can we respect other people's boundaries when we don't respect our own?
yeah. And what I found really interesting myself when I started with this was how I didn't actually know what my needs were.
Mm.
Everything had been so suppressed that I could actually say, "Oh, I don't have any needs." How wrong was I? How wrong was I? As you said, everybody's got needs. It's just that for me, it was so suppressed that I thought I didn't have any, and I still went sideways to get them met anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm going to invite you to, and I invite everybody actually, is to move away from this idea that there's any wrongness in any of
Mm,
this. I think very rarely do people absolutely go out of their way to deliberately cross somebody else's boundaries or deliberately manipulate. There are people out there who do that, and sometimes we can be conscious of, oh, I'm just kind of, oh, that's a little bit slimy. I notice myself sometimes kind of moving into my favorite way is trying to use seduction, is just kind of just seduce people into, and complimenting people so that they'll go, oh, she's nice, of course I'll buy her a drink, or whatever it is that I'm wanting.
yeah.
And I still find myself doing it, and
Yep.
that's okay, because I'm human. It's when I recognize that I've done that and then go back and make amends, or even say in real time, just like, oh, look, I just noticed I've stepped into a bit of seduction there. I'm just going to step back out of that and back into my own self-empowerment, and I'm going to ask from a place, do I actually need that? Do I need to have that need met with you right now, in the way that I was trying to get it met? Or is there another way? And asking myself questions. And sometimes, depending on who I'm with, I'll even verbalize that. I'll even go, oh, okay, I've just noticed that I'm employing this technique. And actually, I'm going to feel into whether I need that need met by you, and is there a cleaner way that I can do that?
Is there any more on what consent isn't, or do you want to go, having established that, into what consent is?
I have pages of this stuff. So yeah, let's move on to what consent is, because I'm sure folks watching will be able to, notice what strategies they employ to get their needs met, because we all have them.
Mm,
So what is consent? So Betty Martin, who was the originator of the Wheel of Consent, talks about the traditional meaning of consent as agreeing to something someone else wants. So I consent to X. In this meaning, I give consent or I get consent. So it's very much about, I have something I want. I'm going to approach you, Fen, and I'm going to ask directly, and you're either going to say yes or no. So I've gotten consent. But the wheel of consent, in the wheel of consent model, we go beyond the conventional yes is yes and no is no. And instead, we look at consent as being an agreement between two or more people that we come up with together. So you don't give me consent. Consent is a collaborative process that we enter into together, where we both, you and I both, actively participate in determining what feels right for both of us. Yeah. In other words, consent is when you arrive at an agreement together.
But what I also love is that, like ourselves, that is ever evolving. Because it's one of the things that I remember practicing in your spaces. It's like I can be partnered up and practicing this and feel okay. And then for whatever reason, because again, we've all got our stuff, we all get triggered, all of a sudden we might not feel comfortable. It's practicing being able to say that and change my mind and having the space to do that, because it's slow down, because I think so much of the time I override mine or others because I'm not going slow enough to even acknowledge it, or I'm in an altered state of mind for whatever reason. I'm stimulated, I'm aroused, I'm over caffeinated, but I've had a drink. Do you know what I mean? It could
Yeah.
be anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, fucking hell. Yeah, I love these spaces. Go on.
So there's two things that come up for me there. One is consent is an ongoing agreement, which means it can change in any moment for any reason. So if you were to offer me a massage, for example, and I go, oh yeah, okay, and then you went, so where would you like to be touched? And I'm like, I feel into that. I want to leave my clothes on, and I just want you to focus on pressure on my shoulders and my neck, which are really sore. Are you willing to do that? Yeah, I'm willing to do that. Okay. Should we set a boundary? Maybe time boundary. Okay. So, how about 5 minutes? Okay, yeah, 5 minutes of back and neck massage. Great, thank you. That's great. So I'll sit down. We'll agree where I'll be sitting, where you'll be, and the massage will proceed. And suddenly you might go, yeah, no, I don't want to do this anymore. So you might say, okay, I'm just going to pause. And what I notice is that I don't want to offer this massage anymore. I feel done. Or I might say, I know we agreed to shoulder and neck, but actually I notice my upper back is a bit tender as well. Would you be willing to extend the massage to my upper back? And then the invitation for you would be to feel into that and notice whether that's something you're willing to offer. So what we're doing in those situations is we're consistently feeling into whether I still have an open heart to whether you still have an open heart to offering the massage, and whether I'm whether I'm getting what I need, whether I want to expand that or contract that. So that's the ongoing negotiation. To come back to your example of when maybe arousal is present, or when alcohol or other substances are present, or where we're in an atmosphere which is heightened, such as a workshop space, and we can end up going along with, because we're going too quickly, we're not paying enough attention to what's happening in our body. So we can step further into people pleasing, doing something because somebody's asked us to do something, when actually we really didn't want to go that far or do that much. Or we can be on the receiving end of something and kind of just, it's easier for me to go along with this now rather than speak up or face the conflict. In some cases, that can be a very serious issue, very serious likelihood, that actually it's much easier to go along with this than it is to deal with the consequences of speaking up. So yeah, slowing down, making choices when we are more likely to be in our rightful selves, coming back to ourselves. So if we're aware there's alcohol present, or drugs or other substances, or a heightened atmosphere, being willing to step out of that long enough to feel into, is this actually right for me? Am I about to do something that I will regret when I'm sober? Or I'll regret once the workshop is over, or I'll regret in the morning? Or, it's asking ourselves those questions rather than going along with.
Yeah, I feel confident in saying I'm not the first person where I've been in this situation, and afterwards I've gone, why? Why didn't I? And again, it's learning that non-judgmental as well. Why didn't I say something? Why didn't I bring it up? Why didn't I? Yeah, and I'm just, yeah, it's it's and I this the speed, or rather the as in the lack of speed, is so important here because
Mm.
we do things so unconsciously and so fast before we're even aware of it. So it's
Yeah,
for me, this is going to be a lifelong practice. I'm aware of that.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Yeah, I guess that kind of brings me to consent as a lifelong practice, because, you know, I did my first Wheel of Consent workshop. I first came across the Wheel of Consent actually when I was doing my sexological bodywork training,
Mm.
and I didn't quite get it. So I went and did a workshop with Betty, 5 days like a pro with Betty Martin, and fucking loved it. It opened so many doors in my mind. It's just like, wow, fucking hell. It was amazing. And so I started to get it. But what I very quickly realized was, unless I stay with the concepts, unless I am bringing this into my daily understanding and my daily interactions with other people, it slips. So I went to another one. I repeated it again because I loved it so much, and because it really helped me kind of bed the theory in. And I still don't get it right every time. I still make mistakes,
Human.
but I think, yeah, yeah. So what I do feel though is that the Wheel of Consent has given me the tools to notice an embodied sense of when it's a yes and when it's a no, and when there's a spectrum, because it's not just yes and no, there's a spectrum of responses.
Mm.
It's given me the tools to listen to my body, the wisdom of my body, and my body knows, even if my mind is telling me I should do this, or I'm not safe, I should do that, or why aren't they doing this? They should be doing that. My body knows. So the Wheel of Consent has given me the tools to feel into my body, this embodied sense of where I am on that spectrum between hell yes and hell no. And it's also helped me to develop the communication skills to express that in a way that other people can hear it.
Yeah.
And and it models for other people how I want them to interact with me. And it gives me the tools to say, this is how I want to interact with you. I want it to be clean and clear, and I want you to really understand where I'm coming from and how is that for you. So, obviously I'm a convert.
Same.
Yeah, absolutely. But it has changed my life. It's changed my life as a practitioner, as a sex coach, as a tantric masseuse. Um, and it's changed my relationships hugely. And it's given me courage and confidence that I was so terrified of before, of upsetting somebody and the consequences of that. Maybe there'd be violence or aggression, but it's given me confidence just to kind of go, okay, if this person can't hear me when I'm being vulnerable and when I'm really expressing something that's important to me, then they are not the right person for me.
Mm.
So I feel really empowered by the Wheel of Consent, most definitely. Yeah.
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 Same. It's very empowering. Yeah. Can you share a bit about the Wheel of Consent framework and what makes it unique in understanding human interactions?
Thank you. Um, so in the Wheel of Consent, the overarching question is, who is it for? So now this often seems kind of obvious, but if we look at touch, for example, um, so you, Fennel, you might offer me a neck and shoulder massage. We've already done this one, haven't we?
May I?
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
I know it's going back to massage, but this really hits home for me.
Okay.
Who's it for?
Yeah.
Because that was one of the things I did around touch. I started
Yeah.
to recognize that I would offer someone a massage, but actually it wasn't for them. It was because I wanted contact and connection. And I ended up actually taking that for myself whilst offering and pretending to give. Well, not
Yes.
pretending, but that was the shadowy side of it. Let me give you a massage. I want to be in service to you. I want to make you feel relaxed. But actually I wanted connection and I wanted touch.
Yeah.
And one, I didn't know that I needed it. I thought I was just being a really nice person. And two, I had no idea that I was putting somebody else out of consent. Again, it was a need I didn't realize I even recognized, but that was how it manifested.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, can absolutely relate to this myself. I'm aware that when I began my tantric massage professionally, that often outside of the professional context, I would say to people, "Why don't you come back to my place and I'll offer you a tantric massage?"
Mm.
Because I knew full well that because it's an erotic massage, that you know my hope, my unspoken hope would be that they would experience arousal. And when they were in arousal, they would consent to taking things further.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that
If I can
came,
get that person into a state and if they don't know their needs either, then yeah. Oh my God. Oh, sorry. I have a visceral reaction to it these days, only because I've seen it so much and continue to see it in myself so much still.
yes, yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I've been on the receiving end of that kind of manipulation, that kind of shadow stuff, and I've done it myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if I ever got a no, this is another thing that's come up from my past very much so. If I ever got a no, I couldn't handle it. I didn't
Mm.
have it felt like it would press on a really deep wound. So if I ever got a no from somebody, I would I would really struggle with that. And so I've spent a lot of my life avoiding situations where I would get a direct no, which is where the manipulation and the seduction came in. Because if I could get them into a place where they were experiencing a certain level of arousal or attraction, they're not going to say no, right?
Yeah. Oh God. We are fascinating creatures, aren't we? We really fucking are. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just say now to anybody who's watching, I don't do that shit anymore.
Anybody watching? I am trying my damnedest to not do that shit anymore. But yeah, it's fucking hell, the insights, they continually blow me away. And
Mm.
again, because there's such an underpinning of no shame, no blame, no judgment, how gentle I can be with that opening process in myself. It's yeah, it's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And even if it does come up, because I've been learning all of this, is being actually able, especially as you said, it's so great when someone else gets it, because then I can actually say, I'm feeling this and I need to be held in it. And again, I'm okay with a no, genuinely
Yes.
okay with a no, because
Mm.
I don't want that person giving me something that they don't want anyway, because that's just going to mush up the energy of it. So, when someone gives me a no, I'm just like, thank you.
Yes.
Oh my God, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, because I don't want, yeah, similarly, I don't want to touch somebody in a way they don't want to be touched. I don't want somebody to touch me because they feel obligated in a way that they don't want to touch me. That feels just now, that feels unclean to me. Whereas before,
mm,
I'd have been very happy with it, even if it felt a little bit shadowy. I would have gone along with it. I would have been absolutely fine with that because I got some of my needs met. The beauty of
yeah,
this is when you can hear a no, when you can accept the no, not as rejection, but as a way of, as a useful piece of information. That person has just given me a really useful piece of information. Thank you for taking care of yourself so that I don't end up touching you in a way that you don't want to be touched.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's a gift.
It
Yeah,
it
it's a
really
gift.
is. I mean, it just takes out buildup of resentment, bitterness. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Sweeps all of that to one side. Yeah, I spent a whole
Mm.
lifetime avoiding the no. And now I welcome it and just go, thank fuck for that. Somebody's given me a no. Oh, beautiful, beautiful. And when I can trust their no, when I can trust that a person can give me a no from their heart of hearts, it means I can, oh, their yes is just amazing. I can trust their yes, and it's a wholehearted yes. And when I give a yes, it's a wholehearted yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
beautiful. Takes all the shit away.
God, just had an erotic response to that. Okay. Consent is sexy. Could not say it enough. Consent is sexy.
Most definitely. I mean, having said
Oh.
that, I mean, the structure of the workshop. So I've got this workshop coming up in April, and I've
Mm.
called it the Consent Revolution because fuck it, it's revolutionary. It's been revolutionary for me in my life, and I've seen it become revolutionary, a revolution for other people, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful to see. Yeah, when I'm working one on one with clients, I use the wheel of consent a lot in my work as a sex coach. So when I'm working one on one with clients and people in workshop situations, it's just absolutely beautiful. So that's why I've called it Consent Revolution, because it bloody well is.
Yeah.
It's introductory level. So if you're brand new to the Wheel of Consent, you can come along to that. And also, like I did like a pro twice because I loved it so much, and it really helped to kind of bed in the principles and the practice for me. I think it's really useful if people who've been to the Wheel of Consent before, they come along again just to kind of refresh, remember, and get it bedded into the system again. So it's absolutely open to people who've done the Wheel of Consent before. And the kind of the idea is that what the structure will be, we will have embodied exercises. So there's this theory, we need to talk about the theory because we need to understand things like, why don't we ask for what we want? And what do we do instead? We need to understand the concept of what is an offer, what is an invitation, and what is a request. Because it's useful to kind of break these things down. Because in separating these dynamics out and breaking them down, we get a cognitive understanding of what we unconsciously are doing. Yeah. So we'll look at the model of the wheel of consent. So there's 4 quadrants and 4 halves
Mm.
also. Is it possible to have 4 halves in a circle? Yes, it is. So
Yes, it
we'll
is.
talk about that. We'll talk about what is consensual. We'll talk about how to make agreements. We'll talk about the shadows, what's out of consent, and how to make a definition of those two. How to get a sense of that in your body. So there is quite a lot of theory. And in between that, there is embodied exercises. What I mean by embodied is the focus is on feeling into your body where your yes, where your no is, where your maybe is. So we'll look at the spectrum of responses as well. It's another piece around theory that you'll be encouraged to actually integrate in that space. And the advantage of being in that container, so there's going to be about 12 participants. So it's a nice small group. And when it's a nice
Mm.
small group, you know, you get to explore deeper. Yeah.
Yes.
And it becomes a very supportive atmosphere rather than just like lots of noise. It becomes a very supportive atmosphere. So we'll do embodied exercises, we'll do theory, we'll do embodied exercises, we'll do theory. So we'll take you through the whole curriculum, which has been updated recently. So we'll take you through as much of that as we can get through. It is fully clothed and it is non-sexual. It's really important. Just because I'm a sex coach doesn't mean to say that we're all going to get naked and do lots of sexy things. As we've already talked about, consent can be applied to the whole of our life. We do use touch in the workshop, but it's because that's a really good medium into the wisdom of the body. But there's no sexual element to that. It's all very platonic. It's not that sexual arousal is banned, But if you
Mm,
experience sexual arousal as part of the workshop, the invitation is to notice that, honor it, and just go, okay, but I don't need to engage with it.
yes.
I'm going to put that to one side and bring my attention back to what's happening in this space, what's happening in the dynamics and the theory of that. So there's no shame in sexual arousal. We're just not engaging with it. Yeah, because
Mm.
it takes us into old patterns. So that's why it's fully clothed, non-sexual, platonic touch.
Yes, so it's suitable for beginners, and it's also a great place to carry on practice and embedding, which I completely agree, because these spaces, for me, I like to get into them as much as possible, because especially when it is able to be practiced with like-minded people, it just speeds it along for me. But also what I really like about it is working through trauma and being neurospicy, the constant check-in and the constant communication. My nervous system just goes, it takes so much of the chatter out of my body and brain, because I know that I'm cultivating a safe space, not only within myself, but with somebody else. And it's just like, holy shit. I I did not realize how gold that was until I started working with it.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I absolutely wholeheartedly agree. It's really beautiful to hold a space where people can drop into this sense of safety and building a container that where trust is key. We do as much as we possibly can to remove the power structures and the inequalities that are in the space, make it a level playing field so people can relax into a state of learning and self acceptance, being non judgmental. Yeah, and also
Mm.
to say that, people, Betty always says, and I absolutely cannot emphasize this enough, the choosing is more important than the doing. So, what that means is you were invited to be in choice for the whole time that you were in that space. So, I will always endeavor. Yeah, I can see what effect that's having on your nervous system. It does to mine. It's like, oh, God, yeah. So, the invitation is that I will always explain and in some cases demonstrate. So we've got a really great team in place. And so some of the team will be part of demonstrating some of the exercises. So I will explain all of the exercises before we begin so that any participants have full understanding or as much as possible of what the exercise entails. And then they're invited to feel into whether that's something that they want to participate in.
Mm,
So that process in itself of just going, do I really want to do this thing? Actually, no. Then finding another way to participate. So that might be sitting in the soft area and watching. That might be taking a rest. That might be writing in your journal. That might be going and getting yourself a cup of tea. It might be some form of self care rather than doing the thing that you're expected to do or pushing yourself to do the thing that you've paid to do, thinking that that's the only way to learn. Actually, just the fact that you are making a choice about how you want to participate, that in itself is golden. So you could come along to this workshop and not experience any physical touch whatsoever and still get enough from this workshop for it to make sense to you and to have an embodied sense of choosing over doing. Yeah.
mm. Well, I think that that has a head start just by making the choice to show up to something like that. To me, when I was like, I'm choosing to go in, it, that is already my learning, my self-awareness, my reflections, my so yeah, it didn't matter if I turned up and actually I didn't want to engage with anything. I had already taken that first, the hardest, most important step for me. I'd
Yeah.
made a choice to learn. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Absolutely. Yeah. I absolutely love this model. It's fills me with joy, this model, and sharing this with other people just fills me with joy. I love it. I absolutely love it. Um, so I mentioned the team. We do have a really great team, and you,
Do
Fen,
share?
part of that team. Yay! Yeah. I love having you in the space. It's just, it's just amazing. You are such a great space holder. So I think that I feel really privileged that you're part of the team, and we have a very experienced team with us. Some who've done all of them have done wheel of consent workshops to some degree or another, and some have actually been training with Betty. So it's wonderful. It's just I feel so honoured to have such a great team on board. So there's that. And I just want to say if you wanted to join this workshop, you can join through my Facebook page, find me on Facebook, or via my website, which is sianjohnson.com/events. I always love saying forward slash. I don't know what it is, forward slash. Feels very powerful. But sianjohnson.com/events.
Just suddenly realised as well, importantly, it's going to be happening on Saturday the 6th of April
Yes.
and Sunday the 7th of April. I just suddenly realised, I was like, fuck, I haven't said the dates. So yeah, Saturday 6th, Sunday 7th of April.
And
Yeah.
it's in Salford, Manchester, the Pathway Studio. But yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great. Can't wait. I love it
I
so much. I
know.
can't wait. So
I
yeah,
know.
hope to see lots
So
of you,
looking.
lots of Vermillionaires there.
Yeah. It's I honestly, folks, I cannot recommend this enough. It's what I love about it as well is more and more conscious spaces are using will of consent as an underpinning. It's already been mentioned in Vermillion that facilitators and people are coming together, even in pods, to have a talk about boundary violations and, the impact of crossing over one's own or another person's after the fact, and how those processes can be all of this can be so helped by learning will of consent. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess where I'm coming from is it's a preventative tool. It's a tool that empowers people before the fact. Um, and and that for me is and obviously when there's been consent violations, we need to make reparations and we need to heal from that. We need to look at ways of not falling into those things again. But if we can learn this up front, then hopefully it will give us the tools where consent violations are less likely to happen. So yeah. Thank you, Fed.
This is what I would have liked to have learned in school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Not how to make peppermints from 3 ingredients, which are very tasty, but I don't think I've ever made those peppermints since. But wheel of consent would have helped me my whole fucking life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are mechanisms for taking the wheel of consent into school, but it's a slow process. It is a slow process. And there's some very good
It's
work going on in universities,
yeah.
and some schools, some progressive schools, but it's slow. It is a slow process, but we're getting there.
Yeah.
We are getting there.
No, it's true. Yeah, and I really want to shout out because there's yourself and there are other people that I know that are going into like the university and school area. Um, I'm just so fucking proud of the work that's A, being learnt and then being shared. I say this all the time, but to do that, to create kind of world that we want to live in and to be healthier people, just healthier. It's a slow unraveling, and
Yeah.
I actually feel I'm starting to feel optimistic for the human race again. At one point, I was like Agent Smith is like, I hate the stench of humans. Do you know what I mean? And now I'm like, fucking hell, we might have a chance,
Yeah.
you know?
We might. Yeah.
Mm.
The world is burning. Let's do what we can while we can.
Yeah,
Person to
yeah,
person, because that's how we reach the tipping point. We make the world a better place by starting with ourselves and our relationships and the way we interact with people on an interpersonal level, and then that spills out into the wider community, into our wider networks, and this is how we change the world.
yeah,
It's my firm belief, and this is
yeah,
one of the tools of doing that.
yeah. Mm. Vive la consent revolution. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, everybody. I
Thank you
really
so
hope
much.
you've got as much enjoyment of watching this and as I have of being privileged and honoured to sit and chat about it.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
All
Ben.
right.
Yay.
Lots of love, folks.
Yay.